motion against Humza Yousaf himself, that's the tricky one. We can't say for certain if that's going to pass. Now, if he does convince Ash Regan to perhaps abstain, which could be enough for him, then he will survive. But for how long is the question, because it has been an extraordinarily damaging week for the Scottish Government and by extension Humza Yousaf, because of course the issue with the Greens is just one of many wider issues at play here. It's been a frankly dreadful 12 months for the SNP in general. They're going into a UK general election campaign, not looking in great shape. Now, of course, Humza Yousaf would argue that he's the man for this. He said yesterday in Dundee very specifically, "I will lead the party into the general election. I will lead them into the 2026 Holyrood elections." But as I said before, that decision is no longer in his hands.
Now, Scotland's First Minister Humza Yousaf is expected to make a series of policy announcements in the coming days, seemingly in a bid to shore up support ahead of 2 confidence votes next week. And he's in combative mood when speaking to STV on a visit to Dundee.
I absolutely intend on fighting that vote of no confidence. Why? Because the people of Scotland elected the SNP as the largest party in the Scottish Parliament. So all this political game playing that the opposition are doing, I'm going to leave it to them. I'm out here, of course, announcing £80 million for affordable housing. That's the priorities of the people that I'm focused on. But no, I won't be resigning. I'll be fighting that vote of no confidence, and I think we'll win it.
Have you considered your position, though?
No, I've just told you that, of course.
Have you considered it?
I've just told you no, because I intend to win.
You haven't even thought about resigning?
No, because I intend on winning that vote of no confidence. I believe we can.
Gosh, well, let's speak to Chris McCall, who's Deputy Political Editor of the Daily Record. Morning.
Good morning.
You were on that visit yesterday, weren't you, to Dundee with the First Minister? Is that the sense that he was giving? I mean, he was quite spiky, wasn't he?
Yes, Humza Yousaf was definitely in bullish mood yesterday. He was trying to give the impression that he's in control of events, that he's getting on with the job, that the Scottish Government, although it's now run by a minority in the SNP, they don't have enough seats for a majority anymore after getting rid of the Greens. Humza Yousaf was trying to say, it's back to business for me, things are progressing as normal. But of course, the reality is somewhat different. His political future is no longer in his hands. He faces not one, but 2 motions of no confidence in the Scottish Parliament. They're both likely to be voted on next week. And the short answer is we don't know how those votes are going to go. There is a real possibility that this time next week that Humza Yousaf could be out of a job.
Gosh. I mean, he says he's fighting on. He's also going to meet opposition parties, isn't he? He's trying to kind of galvanise some kind of support behind him.
Yeah, of course. So he was very clear yesterday, the First Minister. He said he would be talking to the leaders of all the parties in Holyrood, all the political groupings. So that includes the Alaba party, Alex Salmond's breakaway pro-independence party. They have one MSP, that's Ash Regan. She's a defector from the SNP. She moved over to Alaba last year. And suddenly her vote becomes crucial. So Ash Regan was one of 3 candidates to become the successor to Nicola Sturgeon when Nicola Sturgeon dramatically resigned in March last year, which seems a very long time ago now. And Ash Regan fought and lost against Humza Yousaf, and Ash Regan said yesterday that she's not spoken to Humza Yousaf since then. So I think the conversation with her in the coming days could be rather interesting. She's already given a list of demands that she wants from the Scottish Government in return for her vote, and they're pretty big ones, and I'm not confident at this stage that Humza Yousaf can meet them.
Well, I wanted to ask you about that. She also added an extra one yesterday, didn't she? Grangemouth Refinery could be the price of her support, I was reading as well. She added that in. I mean, could Humza Yousaf agree to what she is demanding and maintain political credibility?
I think we have to say at this stage that negotiations are ongoing, so there could be an agreement reached. But I think the First Minister is going to have to make a pretty good counter-offer, because one of the many issues with the Grangemouth Refinery is, of course, it's privately owned. It's a commercial venture owned by Petro Ineos. And a lot of the powers, significant powers over energy, lie with the UK government. So this isn't really the sort of thing that the Scottish government can make firm commitments on, because it really just doesn't have the power over it. And the Scottish government on the issue of Grangerev has been quite quiet, really, because it's kind of said this is a commercial decision, it's not one for us to get involved in. So I think Humza Yousaf is going to have to make some pretty good counter-offer to Ash Regan. Now, of course, what Alaba will have to consider is, being a pro-independence party, would they really want to be seen as bringing down an SNP First Minister? Could that cost them? I mean, they have a very low base of electoral support. They are a very new party. They've only been around for a couple of years. But I don't think amongst the wider pro-independence movement that could be a great look for them. So there's a lot of factors at play here. But, I mean, the bottom line is Humza Yousaf is on very, very shaky ground here.
We spoke to Nicky Morgan yesterday, former Education Secretary, as we do every Friday. And she was saying that once a vote of confidence is called in a leader, or indeed a government, even if you survive it, it's basically the beginning of the end, because that is a signal. Is that your sense right now?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, we presume that right now, we don't know exactly how the parties will vote, but one of the motions of no confidence, that's the one in the Scottish Government, that's the one being tabled by Scottish Labour. I don't think that's going to pass, because I don't think the Greens will vote for it, because the Greens until very recently were part of that government. The motion against Humza Yousaf himself, that's the tricky one. We can't say for certain if that's going to pass. Now, if he does convince Ash Regan to perhaps abstain, which could be enough for him, then he will survive. But for how long is the question, because it has been an extraordinarily damaging week for the Scottish Government and, by extension, Humza Yousaf, because, of course, the issue with the Greens is just one of many wider issues at play here. It's been a frankly dreadful 12 months for the SNP in general. They're going into a UK general election campaign, not looking in great shape. Now, of course, Humza Yousaf would argue that he's the man for this. He said yesterday in Dundee very specifically, "I will lead the party into the general election. I will lead them into the 2026 Holyrood elections." But as I said before, that decision is no longer in his hands. Very soon, the SNP could be looking for a new leader, and yeah, it's all to play for.
Chris, good to speak to you. Thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you.
Chris McCall there, Deputy Political Editor of The Daily Record. Joe Mo's got in touch saying Sir Humza Yousaf cancelled a speech on the economy at Strathclyde yesterday, but made something else in Dundee. He's now planning a series of policy announcements over the coming days. It's all too late. The wheels are off the bus of politics by press release. People want the red meat of actual delivery.
It's fascinating that. I'm going to add some comments from Ross Greer, who's a Scottish Green MSP who I was speaking to yesterday. And his implication was, his absolute assertion was that they have lost confidence in Humza Yousaf. He said, absolutely 100%, we've lost confidence. And so they will vote against him in the sort of personal, if you like, vote of no confidence. When it came to the vote of no confidence in the government, Ross Greer was quite interesting, because his implication was, he sort of said, we've not made our minds up on that yet, because we don't know if Humza Yousaf will still be the First Minister of that government. So the government could look very different by the time that vote comes around.
So once again, that comes back to him as a person.
Exactly, and implying, therefore, that if it's not Humza Yousaf, that their vote could go a different way, was my interpretation of what he said. And I just think that's a fascinating thing, because he was also defending, as Chris was guessing at there, the fact that the Scottish Greens have been part of that government for the last couple of years, and in Ross Greer's words, they're very proud of what they achieved.
The question is, which vote comes first then?
That's a great... I don't know if we know that in terms of the order of things.
Yeah, because if Humza Yousaf was to lose a vote of... Well, there was no confidence in him as a leader.
Yeah.
Then that could change the way people voted in the confidence vote in the government. But if it was the other way around...
That's a really good... I don't know if we know how that would work. In chronological terms, the personal one on him was lodged first.
So you would think that'd be first.
Yeah, if that has implications.
Right, we're going to try and find out throughout the course of the morning. We're going to speak to lots of people about this story anyway, so we'll try and find out.